Okay, my name is Darrell Ross. I'm a member of the Tseshaht First Nation. I work for the Tseshaht First Nation.
My name is Tom Happynook. My traditional name is Happynook. Happynook was anglicized to Happynook, so I consider that to be quite fortunate that it wasn't butchered too badly. I am the head hereditary whaling chief of the Huu-ay-aht First Nations.
I'm Wickaninnish, Cliff Atleo, sit in a house of Ahousaht at home in Ahousaht. House of Fluckish or Thais Makuna. Our second chief is Huu-ay-aht. So we have three principal chiefs. And I was born and raised in Ahousaht. Went to school in Port Alberta from age 10 to 16, 17. Grew up as a fisherman.
My name's Emily Dicken. I'm a PhD student here at the University of Victoria, and I work in the area of looking at Nuu-chah-nulth stories and place-based stories essentially around tsunamis and understanding the role that they can play in community preparedness.
We can't just rely on technology and modern Western science to protect us from tsunamis, but to actually remember that, that our people who are still living in these communities carry that knowledge. And whenever we get warnings of a potential tsunami, then our community kicks in that plan and we all migrate and pick up the elders and we migrate up on the hill where our big house is. And so we have, in today's context, in a modern context, we have knowledge, traditional knowledge about what to look for and how to be prepared. But we also are plugged into the provincial emergency plan process. And so we're covering it at, I think, at both ends of the spectrum in terms of our own knowledge and understanding of tsunamis and earthquakes, but also plugging into the modern emergency preparedness process in the province.
Communities are in it together when they experience a disastrous event. You know, even though we say that we need to be personally prepared, it extends so much more into what community preparedness looks like, and to know that you're not on your own in this. And I think that's something that is so lived and exhibited in so many First Nations communities, whether remote or urban. And I think it's a unique quality that we see in First Nations communities that will set them apart from non-First Nations communities. There's a strength, there's an ability to come together and to celebrate life, family, and community.
Our communities have plans should a tsunami strike. And they've had warnings, and they've moved our people to higher ground, albeit false warnings, but they know that their plan has worked effectively. But to our credit, our people had plans, and every small community on the coast should have plans.
I'm open to learning and expanding on tsunami research because it'll connect us stronger to our homelands.
I've liked this idea of what you guys are doing with the sensors. Right from the get-go, I've been aware of it right from the time it was first talked about. And I thought that was a good idea. We should use technology that would augment those things that we know to be real, warnings from the animal world and we have a challenge to actually hang on to those things that our people understood in the past was a given. It was part of growing up and part of your teachings to understand and know that there is a connection with the animal world. And you pay attention to them because they have senses that are far superior to what we have. So to me, that it's an extension of humankind, what's happening with these ocean stuff that you guys are stringing out there, that is an extension of the animal senses. And it's a bonus, it's a plus, helpful. I feel very strongly, that we should not be ignored by academia and researchers in this particular area.
I think there's a lot of powerful ways that the scientific community and different First Nations communities can work together to move forward around tsunami science and preparedness. I don't necessarily think that it will be a complete marriage or complete intersection of knowledge systems, but I think there's really complementary knowledge systems that can move forward in parallel together.
I think that there is definitely a place for technology in tsunami preparedness. I think the Neptune cable is an incredible project that's going on, and I think that it'll be useful in terms of helping to signal that something's going on. So I think technology plays an important role in today, but I don't want us to lose that power of observation. I've thought a lot about over my lifetime about how we sort of bring the two knowledge, Western science and traditional ecological knowledge together. And I've come to the conclusion that we can't mesh them. They don't mesh. They're diametrically opposite thinking in worldviews. But what we need to do is to bring them side by side and then move forward together side by side. So don't spend any energy and effort trying to figure out how to mix them together and that kind of thing, but rather how do they complement each other and what steps do we need to take to move the knowledge around tsunami and the science around tsunami forward together so that our communities are protected.
I think the tsunamis, made us respect our culture and our disciplines more by respecting that we had to be ready, and whether or not I was ready as a person or as a community or as a culture and religion at the same time. You always had to make sure that you were practicing your traditional beliefs, and if not, these things would happen. And I think a lot of our lessons were learned by these big events. There's an opportunity there to work together in science and traditional history. We have a wanting to get our kids into science, so I think if we can have those stories and histories told as part of introductory science lessons in the schools, I think it would help that to get some of our kids to take a good aim at sciences.
One of the things that's important is not to forget that we are observers. All of the knowledge that we've gained over generations, millennia, is from observation and keeping those observations passed down through the generations. So I think if there's any advice that I would give, it would be to continue to have those teachings of observation brought forward to the generations. I think it's important because when you know the signs and you can see the signs and you know what's coming, you're in a much better position to survive a large tsunami on the coast.
There's a wealth of information around the world on different oral histories around tsunami events. One that comes to my mind instantaneously is the story of Sumulu, Indonesia. It's a small island community where in the early 1900s, the community had experienced a very significant seismic and tsunami event, and highly devastating for their community, where they lost about 70% of their population as a result of the tsunami. following that tsunami, the community created an oral narrative. Essentially, it was a bedtime story that they told to their children about the impacts of the tsunami, from the shaking of the earthquake to the receding of the sea to the incoming of multiple waves. And this story was retold and retold and retold over generations. And then when the Boxing Day tsunami happened, the community knew what to do and responded appropriately, and they actually had 0 fatalities in that community, whereas the neighboring communities had devastating consequences because they didn't respond in the right way. I think this is a really amazing example of how a community experienced a very tragic event, developed an oral narrative that worked for their community, practiced that narrative over generations, and then when they needed to, exercised on that knowledge, and essentially saved countless lives.